Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The private ICU at Lakeview Elite Medical Center in Chicago smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. The room was a sterile cocoon of white walls and sleek machines, their screens glowing with numbers that meant life or death. A steady beep, beep from the heart monitor filled the air, punctuated by the soft hum of an air purifier. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the city skyline glittered under a late September dusk, Lake Michigan shimmering in the distance. Inside, James Carter lay motionless on a crisp hospital bed, a red scar slicing across his left temple like a warning. At 42, the billionaire CEO of Horizon Innovations, one of the few black tech moguls to crack the Fortune 500, was a man who'd built an empire from nothing. Now he looked like a fallen king, his broad shoulders still under the thin hospital gown, his dark eyes closed to the world, or so everyone thought. 18 days ago, James's private jet had made an emergency landing after a hydraulic failure. No one could explain. The pilot walked away with bruises. James, the only passenger, ended up here, hooked to tubes and monitors, his company teetering on the edge of chaos. The scar on his temple was the only visible mark of the crash that nearly killed him. But what no one in this high-tech tomb knew, not the doctors, not the nurses, not even his closest allies, was that James had woken up on day 3. His mind was sharp, his senses alive, but he'd made a choice to stay silent, eyes shut, breathing slow and steady. He wasn't just fighting for his life, he was hunting for the truth. It started with a whisper, faint, but clear through the glass door of his suite. "The board's getting antsy." "Derek," a woman's voice said low and clipped. Lauren Brooks. James's ex-girlfriend of 7 years sounded more annoyed than heartbroken. Her heels clicked on the polished floor outside, pacing like a predator. "We can't wait forever. Investors are circling like vultures. Chill." Lauren came the reply, smooth and smug. Derek Carter, James's half-brother and VP of Operations at Horizon Innovations, had a voice that always carried a hint of a smirk. "One more week and we're golden. Dr. Hayes has the medical reports ready. The incapacitation clause kicks in, and we're running the show." James's heart thudded, a spike the monitors didn't catch. His fingers twitched under the sheet, but he forced them still. Incapacitation clause. That was the board's fail-safe meant to transfer power if the CEO was deemed unfit. They were planning to steal his company, his life's work, while he lay here helpless, or so they thought. The crash wasn't an accident. Someone had sabotaged his jet, and now Lauren and Derek were circling the throne, ready to carve up his empire. James's mind raced, piecing it together. He'd always known Derek envied him, the golden son who'd outshone him at every turn. But Lauren, she'd been his partner, his confidant, until he'd caught her leaking company secrets 2 years ago. He'd ended it, but clearly she hadn't let go of her ambitions. The glass door slid open with a soft whoosh, and lighter footsteps approached. A new scent cut through the antiseptic lavender, subtle but warm. "Good evening, Mr. Carter," a woman said, her voice clear and professional. No trace of the fake pity James had heard from other nurses. "I'm Zoe Harris, your night nurse." "Let's see how you're doing." James kept his eyes closed, but his senses sharpened. Zoe's hands moved with precision, checking his IV, adjusting the monitor. Her touch was firm, but gentle, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. He caught the rustle of her scrubs, the faint scratch of a pen as she made notes. Then a pause. The chair beside his bed creaked as she sat down closer than he expected. "I don't know if you can hear me," Zoe said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. but I'm gonna talk anyway. Your chart's a mess. Mr. Carter, something's off, and I'm not just talking about your vitals. James's pulse quickened, but he kept his breathing even. Off. What did she mean? Zoe leaned closer. He could feel the warmth of her presence, the faint lavender scent stronger now. I've been at this hospital 3 days, she continued, and I'm already seeing red flags. Your sedation level's way higher than they should be for a guy with your condition, and the reflex reports. They don't add up. His mind spun. Sedation levels, reflex reports. He'd assumed the fog in his body was from the crash, but Zoe's words lit a spark. Was someone deliberately keeping him under? He wanted to open his eyes to demand answers, but he couldn't risk it. Not yet. Not until he knew who was behind this and whether Zoe was friend or foe. I'm not just a nurse, Zoe said, her voice barely audible now, like she was confessing a secret. I'm a forensic neurologist. I've seen cases like yours before, and I'm telling you someone's messing with your treatment. I don't know who and I don't know why, but I'm gonna find out. I promise. James's heart skipped a beat, a flicker too subtle for the machines to catch. A forensic neurologist. Working as a night nurse. It sounded crazy, but her tone carried a conviction that made him believe her. For the first time in days, a sliver of hope pierced the darkness. He wasn't alone in this fight, but he had to be careful. If Zoe was right, the people keeping him here wouldn't hesitate to silence her too. The door slid open again, and Zoe's chair scraped back. Just checking vitals, Dr. Hayes, she said, her voice professional again, all traces of the confession gone. Everything's stable. Thanks, nurse, Dr. Leonard Hayes replied. His tone clipped and distracted. I'll take it from here. As the door closed, James lay still, his mind racing. Zoe's words echoed in his head. Someone's messing with your treatment, the crash, the sedation. Lauren and Derek's whispers. It was all connected. And Zoe Harris, this stranger, with a lavender scent and a secret, might be his only way out. Behind his closed eyes, a plan began to form. He'd built Horizon Innovations from a garage in Southside Chicago, facing doubters at every turn. If Lauren and Derek thought they could bury him, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next night, the ICU was quieter. The city outside cloaked in a soft rain. James lay in the same position, his body a prison, but his mind a war room. He'd spent the day listening, piecing together fragments of conversations Lauren had visited, once her perfume heavy, and her voice cold, as she muttered about stock prices Derek had been in and out always with Dr. Hayes, their words careful, but laced with urgency. The board needs those reports by Friday, Derek had said. Make sure they're airtight. Now the door slid open, and the lavender scent returned. Zoe's footsteps were soft, deliberate. All right, Mr. Carter, she said, her voice warm but focused. Let's check those vitals, you hanging in there. She moved around the bed, her hands quick and sure. James waited, his heart pounding. He needed to know if she was for real. As she adjusted his IV, he risked a single deliberate twitch of his index finger. Zoe froze. Her breath caught a sharp intake that broke the room's silence. Did you just... she whispered, leaning closer. Her face was inches from his, her eyes searching his closed lids. If you can hear me, do that again. James twitched his finger twice, slow and clear. Zoe's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Oh my God, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. You're awake. You're awake. He wanted to nod to speak, but he couldn't. Not yet. Zoe's hands moved to his wrist, checking his pulse manually, her touch steady despite her shock. Okay, she muttered more to herself than to him. We need a system. One twitch for yes, 2 for no. Blink once if you agree. James blinked a slow, deliberate motion. Zoe let out a shaky laugh. You're something else, Carter. All right, let's figure this out. Are you in pain? 2 twitches. No. Have you been awake long? 1 twitch. Yes. Her eyes widened. Since when? Days. 1 twitch. Zoe sat back, processing. You heard them, didn't you? The people talking outside. Your brother and... Who's the woman? James hesitated, then twitched once. Yes, he couldn't say Lauren's name, not yet, but Zoe was close. Too close. If she kept digging, she'd be in danger. He needed her to trust him, but he also needed to protect her. I found something last night, Zoe said, her voice low again. Your medical records. They're a mess. The sedation levels are insane, like someone's trying to keep you under longer than necessary. And the reflex reports. They're faked. Someone's covering their tracks. James's mind raced. Faked reports. That explained the fog, the heaviness in his limbs. Dr. Hayes was in on it, maybe others. He twitched once, urging her to keep going. I'm not supposed to be here, Zoe admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I took this job to investigate the clinic. I've seen too many patients get screwed over by shady doctors, and this place has cover-up written all over it. But your case, it's personal now, personal. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. James didn't know why Zoe cared, but he felt it a connection fragile, but real. He twitched once, a silent thank you. Zoe leaned closer, her voice urgent. I'm reducing your sedation just a little. No one will notice, but it'll help you move more. Maybe even talk soon. We've got to be careful, though. If they catch us... She didn't finish, but James understood. They were playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were his life and hers. He blinked once, sealing their pact. The next morning, the ICU buzzed with more activity than usual. James lay still, his senses on high alert. He'd caught snippets of Derek's voice earlier, barking orders to Dr. Hayes about tightening security. Zoe's article must have rattled them. Could let them squirm, but then a new voice cut through the haze. I'm telling you, Nina, something's not right. It was Claire Donovan, James's ex from 5 years ago, her sharp New York accent unmistakable. She was a journalist, the kind who could sniff out a scandal from a mile away. James was fine before that crash. I want to see him. You know I can't let you in. Claire. Nina Jackson replied, her tone firm but warm. Nina, James's lawyer and oldest friend, was one of the few people he trusted completely. The doctors are strict about visitors. Then get me those medical reports, Claire pressed. I'm not leaving Chicago till I know he's okay. James's heart sank. Claire was digging, which meant trouble. She was relentless, but she didn't know the full picture. If she pushed too hard, Derek and Lauren might panic, and panic made people dangerous. As the day dragged on, James waited for Zoe. When she finally slipped into the room that night, her lavender scent was a lifeline. We've got a problem, she said, her voice tight. Your ex Claire. She's stirring things up. Derek's freaking out, and Dr. Hayes is doubling down on your meds. I had to swap the IV bags to keep your dose low. James twitched once, grateful, but worried Zoe was risking everything for him. A stranger. Why? He needed to know more, but his body was still a cage. I also found something else, Zoe said, pulling a tablet from her bag. There's a hacker calls themselves Shadow. They've been messing with your records, making it look like you're brain dead. I traced an IP address to a server linked to PowerCore, the energy giant. Sound. Familiar. PowerCore. James's stomach twisted. They'd been sniffing around Horizon for months, trying to buy out Sunrise, his renewable energy project for low-income communities. He'd refused their offers, knowing they'd kill the project to protect their fossil fuel empire. Now it all made sense. The crash, the sedation, Derek and Lauren's betrayal. It was PowerCore pulling the strings. He twitched once, then again, urging Zoe to keep digging. She nodded, her eyes fierce. "I'm on it, Carter, but we're running out of time. If PowerCore's behind this, they won't stop at you. We need a plan." James blinked, his mind racing. A plan. He'd built $1 billion company by seeing opportunities where others saw walls. Now lying in this bed, he saw his chance. Zoe was his ally, his secret weapon. Together, they'd turn this betrayal into a trap. But first, he had to move, to speak, to fight. Meanwhile, in the Horizon Innovations IT department, Kevin Techie Lopez was having a very bad day. The lanky 28-year-old was hunched over his desk, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans, when he realized he'd screwed up big time. He'd meant to email Nina about a server glitch, but instead, he'd CC'd the entire company, including Derek, on a memo about suspicious activity in the medical record system. "Oh man, I'm so fired," Kevin muttered, running a hand through his messy hair. His phone buzzed. It was Nina. "Kevin." "What the hell?" she said, her voice a mix of amusement and exasperation. "You just sent Derek into a tailspin. He's screaming about a data breach. I swear it was an accident," Kevin yelped. "I didn't mean to." "CC the whole company." Nina laughed. "Relax, Techie. You might have just done us a favor. Keep your eyes on that system. Something's fishy, and I need you sharp." As Kevin hung up, he grinned despite himself. Maybe he wasn't fired yet. Back in the ICU, James caught the faintest echo of that chaos through Zoe's whispered updates. Kevin's screw-up had bought them time, rattled Derek's cage. Good. Let him sweat. Zoe sat beside James now, her tablet glowing in the dark. "We're in this together, Carter," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not letting them win. You with me?" One twitch. "Yes." In the silence of the ICU, with Chicago's lights twinkling outside, James felt a fire ignite. Lauren and Derek thought he was down for the count. PowerCore thought they could bury Sunrise. They were wrong with Zoe by his side. He wasn't just surviving. He was plotting a comeback that would shake their world. If James and Zoe's fight against this jaw-dropping betrayal has you hooked, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What would you do if you woke up to a conspiracy like this? Spill your thoughts below. We're all ears. The ICU at Lakeview Elite Medical Center was a fortress of silence, broken only by the rhythmic beep of James Carter's heart monitor. The Chicago skyline outside the window was a mosaic of lights, each one a reminder of the world moving on without him. James lay still, his body a traitor, but his mind a battlefield. 3 nights had passed since Zoe Harris, the night nurse with a secret, had blown his world open. Someone was deliberately keeping him sedated, faking his medical records to lock him in this limbo. And the culprits his ex, Lauren Brooks, his half-brother, Derek Carter, and behind them, the shadowy hand of PowerCore, the energy giant, desperate to kill his Sunrise project. James's fingers twitched under the sheet, itching to fight back. But for now, he was a ghost in his own life, relying on Zoe to be his eyes, ears, and fists. Zoe slipped into the room just after midnight, her lavender scent cutting through the antiseptic haze. Her scrubs were slightly wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, but her eyes burned with purpose. She checked the monitors, her movements quick and precise, then leaned close to James. "All right, Carter," she whispered, her voice low but warm. "We've got a system now. 1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. Ready to dig deeper." James twitched, once his heart kicking up a notch. Zoe was his lifeline, but every moment she spent with him was a risk. If Derek or Dr. Leonard Hayes caught her tampering with his meds, she'd be out the door, or worse. He'd heard enough of their hallway whispers to know they weren't playing games. We need those reports airtight. Derek had snapped at Hayes earlier that day. No leaks, no screw-ups. Zoe pulled a tablet from her bag, its screen casting a faint glow across her face. "I've been poking around," she said, her fingers flying over the touchscreen. "That hacker shadow. They're good but sloppy. Left a trail in the clinic's server. I traced it to an IP address tied to PowerCore's Chicago office. They're not just funding this. They're calling the shots." James's mind raced PowerCore. He'd turned down their buyout offers for Sunrise, his renewable energy system designed to bring cheap power to low-income neighborhoods. Sunrise was his legacy, a way to give back to communities like the South Side, where he'd grown up, dodging gang turf wars and skeptical teachers. PowerCore saw it as a threat to their oil and gas empire, sabotaging his jet, keeping him in a fake coma. It was all to bury Sunrise before it could change the game. He twitched once, urging Zoe to keep going. "There's more," Zoe said, her voice dropping even lower. "Your lawyer, Nina Jackson. She's being targeted." I overheard Derek on the phone talking about documents found in her office. Sounds like they're setting her up to look dirty, maybe bribery or contract tampering. James's blood ran cold. Nina was his rock, the one who'd helped him navigate the corporate world's old boys club as a black CEO. She'd faced the same sidelong glances, the same whispered doubts, and never flinched. If Derek and Lauren took her down, Horizon Innovations would be defenseless. He twitched once. Then again, his signal for urgency. Zoe nodded, reading him like a book. "I've got a contact at Nina's firm," she said. "I'll warn her anonymously. She's sharp. She'll see through the setup." Before James could respond, the door slid open with a whoosh. Zoe snapped her tablet shut and stood, her voice shifting to professional calm. "Just adjusting the IV. Dr. Hayes." She set her hands steady as she fussed with the tube. Dr. Hayes, a wiry man with thinning hair and nervous eyes, barely glanced at her. Fine, he muttered, scribbling on a clipboard. "Keep those vitals stable. Mr. Carter's condition is delicate." James caught the hesitation in Hayes's voice. Delicate my ass, he thought. The guy was in PowerCore's pocket, faking reports to keep him under. As Hayes left, Zoe exhaled her shoulders, relaxing. "That was too close," she whispered, sitting back down. "We're walking a tightrope here, Carter, but I'm not backing off. You with me?" One twitch. "Hell yes." The next morning, the ICU felt different, like the air itself was charged with static. James lay still, his senses tuned to every sound. He'd caught a new voice earlier, one that sent a jolt through him. "I'm not leaving till I see him. Nina, Claire." Donovan had said her New York accent sharp as a blade. Claire, his ex from 5 years ago, was a journalist with a nose for trouble. They'd been close once, her fire matching his ambition, but it ended when she pushed for a future he wasn't ready for. Now she was here, sniffing around his crash. "You can't just barge in." "Claire," Nina replied, her voice calm but firm. "The doctors have rules, but I'll get you the visitor logs if you cool it." "Cool it," Claire snapped. James was fine before that crash. Someone's hiding something, and I'm going to find out who. James's heart sank. Claire was trouble not because she was wrong, but because she was too right. If she kept pushing, she'd draw attention, and Derek would tighten the screws. He needed her to back off, but he was stuck in this bed, a prisoner in his own skin. That night, Zoe returned, her face tense. "Your ex is making waves," she said, checking his monitors. Claire Donovan published a piece in the Tribune about irregularities at Lakeview Elite Derek's. Losing it, he doubled security, and Hayes is paranoid. "I had to swap your IV again to keep the sedation low." James twitched once, grateful but uneasy. Claire's article was a double-edged sword. It put pressure on Derek, but it also put Zoe in the crosshairs. He wanted to warn her, to tell her to be careful, but all he could do was listen. "There's something else," Zoe said, her voice softening. "I saw Marcus Reed today. He's a neurosurgeon brought in to evaluate you. Problem is, he's complicated." James caught the shift in her tone. Complicated. He twitched once, asking for more. Zoe sighed, leaning back in the chair. "Marcus and we've got history. Nothing serious. Just a fling from a charity project last year. He's charming, but he doesn't get me. Keeps trying to pick things up where we left off." James's chest tightened. A fling. He didn't know why it bothered him, but the thought of some smooth-talking doctor hitting on Zoe made his blood simmer. He twitched twice, a reflex he regretted instantly. Zoe raised an eyebrow, catching it. "What you don't approve," she teased, a smirk, tugging at her lips. "Don't worry, Carter. I'm not here to play games, but Marcus is persistent and he's nosy. If he figures out I'm messing with your meds—" She didn't finish, but James got the picture. Marcus wasn't just a romantic rival. He was a threat to their plan. He twitched once, urging her to stay sharp. The next day, the ICU was a hive of activity. James caught Marcus's voice before he saw him smooth and confident, like a radio host. "Zoe, you're looking good," Marcus said, his footsteps stopping near the door. "Got time for a coffee later? We need to catch up." "I'm swamped, Marcus," Zoe replied, her tone polite but firm. "Maybe another time. Come on, babe." Marcus pressed a playful edge in his voice. "You can't save the world every night." James's fingers clenched under the sheet. "Babe, who did this guy think he was?" He forced himself to stay still, but his pulse spiked, and he prayed the monitor didn't betray him. Zoe's voice stayed cool. "I'm working, Marcus. Let's keep it professional." Marcus chuckled, undeterred. All right, but I'm not giving up." As Marcus left, Zoe slipped into the room, her face a mix of annoyance and amusement. "He's a piece of work," she muttered, checking James's chart. "You heard that, didn't you? Guy thinks he's God's gift to women?" James twitched once, then risked a single blink, his version of a smirk. Zoe laughed softly, shaking her head. "Oh, you're trouble, Carter. Don't think I don't see that." The moment passed, but it left a warmth in James's chest. Zoe wasn't just his ally. She was someone he was starting to care about, maybe more than he should, but there was no time for that now. The stakes were climbing and the walls were closing in. Later that afternoon, James caught another conversation, this one more alarming. "Nina's a problem," Lauren said, her voice sharp outside the glass door. "She's asking for the original test results. We can't have her poking around." "Relax," Derek replied, his tone icy. "I've got a meeting set with the Bar Association's Ethics Committee. Some incriminating documents just showed up in her office. She'll be too busy saving her license to bother us." James's blood boiled. Nina was family, the sister he'd never had. Framing her was low, even for Derek. He needed to warn her, but he was trapped, his body a cage of wires and drugs. Zoe was his only shot, and she was already stretched thin. That night, Zoe returned her tablet glowing in the dim room. "I've got news," she said, her voice urgent. "I sent an anonymous tip to Nina's office about the ethics setup. She's on it. She's already hired a PI to trace the documents, but Derek's not stopping. He's pushing the board to vote on the incapacitation clause by Friday." James twitched once, his mind racing. Friday. 3 days. They were running out of time. He needed to move, to speak, to stop this before it was too late. Zoe seemed to read his thoughts. "I'm upping your physical therapy," she said, her voice firm. "We're doing it off the books at night. You've got to be ready to walk into that boardroom and shut them down." One twitch. He was ready, or he'd die. Trying. Meanwhile, across town, at Horizon Innovations, Kevin Techie Lopez was having another crisis. He'd been digging into the server glitch Nina asked about, but he'd accidentally spilled coffee on Derek's laptop during a meeting. "You're done, Lopez." Derek had roared, his face red as a tomato. "You don't sign my checks, man," Kevin had shot back then, bolted before Derek could throw something. Now hiding in the IT room, Kevin was on the phone with Nina. "I swear I didn't mean to piss him off," he said, pacing. "But that laptop, it's got some shady files. I saw power core in the metadata before it shorted out." Nina's voice was calm but excited. "Good work, Techie. Back up everything you've got. We're building a case." Kevin grinned, popping another Red Bull. Maybe he wasn't such a screw-up after all. Back in the ICU, Zoe relayed the news to James, her eyes bright. "Kevin's a mess, but he's our mess," she said. "He's got Derek rattled, and that's our edge." James twitched once, a spark of hope flaring. Derek and Lauren were slipping, power core was exposed, and Zoe was a force of nature. But with Claire stirring the pot and Marcus circling Zoe, the game was getting messier. As Zoe adjusted his IV, her hand brushed his lingering a moment too long. "We're going to pull this off, Carter," she whispered. "You and me. One twitch. You and me." The ICU at Lakeview Elite Medical Center was a world of shadows and secrets, its sterile walls hiding a battlefield. James Carter lay in his hospital bed, the red scar on his temple, a stark reminder of the jet crash that wasn't an accident. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the window, a distant promise of freedom. For 5 days, James had been a silent warrior, his body trapped but his mind razor-sharp. Zoe Harris, his night nurse and secret ally, had uncovered a conspiracy. His ex, Lauren Brooks, and half-brother Derek Carter were working with Power Core to keep him sedated, faking his coma to steal Horizon Innovations. Their weapon, a hacker named Shadow manipulating his medical records. Their goal, to kill Sunrise James's renewable energy project for underserved communities. But Zoe was his ace in the hole, and together they were rewriting the rules of this deadly game. Tonight the air in the ICU felt heavier, charged with the weight of what was coming. Zoe slipped into the room just after 1 a.m., her lavender scent, a quiet comfort. Her scrubs were crisp, her hair tied back, but her eyes held a storm. Part determination, part worry. She checked the monitors, her hands steady, then leaned close to James. "All right, Carter," she whispered, her voice a mix of grit and warmth. "We're at the halfway mark. 1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. You ready to shake things up?" James twitched once, his pulse quickening. Zoe's plan to reduce his sedation was working. His fingers moved more easily now, his thoughts clearer. But every step forward was a gamble. Derek was pushing the board to vote on the incapacitation clause in 2 days, and Dr. Leonard Hayes was tightening security. If they were caught, Zoe could lose more than her job. James wanted to protect her, but all he could do was trust her and fight from this bed. Zoe pulled out her tablet, its glow casting soft shadows across her face. "I've got something big," she said, her voice low and urgent. I traced Shadow's IP address further. It's not just Power Core. They're using a server tied to a guy named Ryan Kessler. Ring. Any bells? James's heart skipped. Ryan Kessler, a former engineer at Horizon, fired 3 years ago for skimming funds. He'd begged for his job, then vanished, leaving a trail of bitter emails. Could Kessler be Shadow? It fit his tech skills, his grudge. James twitched once, confirming Zoe's eyes narrowed. Thought so. Kessler's got the know-how to mess with your records and the motive to screw you over. I'm digging deeper, but we need hard proof. Before James could respond, a new sound broke the silence. Footsteps heavy and deliberate. Zoe snapped her tablet shut and stood, her voice shifting to clinical calm. Just checking vitals. Dr. Khan, she said as the door slid open. Dr. Amina Khan. A neurologist with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe stepped inside. Good, she said, her voice low. Close the door. Zoe. We need to talk. James's pulse spiked, but he kept still. Khan was an unknown friend or foe. Zoe hesitated, then shut the door with a soft click. Khan approached the bed, her gaze sweeping over James. I've seen your chart, she said. Her tone clipped. It's a disgrace. The sedation levels are criminal, and the reflex reports are pure fiction. Zoe's shoulders relaxed, but her voice stayed cautious. You're saying what I've been thinking, Dr. Khan, but why are you here? Khan's lips twitched, almost a smile. Because I don't like being lied to. I'm a forensic neurologist like you. I know a cover-up when I see one. And this, she gestured to James. This is attempted murder, dressed up as medicine. James's mind reeled. Another ally. Khan's bluntness was a lifeline, but it also raised the stakes. He twitched once, signaling Zoe to trust her. Zoe nodded her eyes, flicking to James. Okay, she said. What's the play? Khan pulled a portable EEG from her bag. We run a brain scan off the books. If I'm right, Carter's neural activity is normal proof. He's being drugged to stay under. But we've got to move fast. Hayes is watching. The scan took 30 agonizing minutes, the hum of the EEG filling the room like a heartbeat. Zoe stood guard at the door, her hand on the handle ready to stall anyone who came too close. Khan worked in silence, her fingers flying over the device. James lay still, his thoughts churning. If Khan was right, this scan could be their silver bullet, hard evidence to expose Hayes and Power Core. But if they were caught, it was over. Finally, Khan shut off the machine, her face grim but satisfied. No permanent damage, she said, her voice low. Your brain's firing on all cylinders. Carter, the sedation's the only thing holding you back. This is criminal negligence at best, attempted murder at worst. Zoe's eyes blazed with triumph, but her voice stayed steady. We need this in court, Dr. Khan. Something bulletproof. Khan nodded, slipping the EEG back into her bag. I'll encrypt the data and store it off-site. But you two need to be careful. Hayes is nervous, and nervous people make mistakes, or they get dangerous. As Khan left, Zoe sat beside James, her hand brushing his. We've got them, Carter, she whispered, her voice trembling with hope. This is our shot. James twitched once, his heart swelling. Zoe wasn't just fighting for him. She was fighting for justice, for truth. But the warmth of her touch lingered, stirring something deeper. He pushed it aside. There was no room for feelings. Not now. Not when Claire Donovan and Marcus Reed were circling, complicating everything. The next day, the ICU buzzed with tension. James caught Claire's voice again, sharper now, arguing with Nina outside. I'm not backing off, Nina, Claire said, her New York accent slicing through the air. That Tribune piece rattled them. I'm this close to blowing it wide open. You're poking a bear, Claire, Nina replied, her voice low. Give me time to dig into the medical reports. We'll do this right. Claire's heels clicked away, but her words lingered. James's stomach twisted. Claire's article had forced Derek's hand, but it was also painting a target on her back. He needed her to slow down, but he was stuck, his voice silenced by drugs and strategy. Then a new voice cut through, smooth, confident, and way too close. Zoe, you're killing me, Marcus, Reed said, his footsteps stopping just outside the door. "I'm trying to take you out, show you a good time. When are you gonna say yes?" James's fingers clenched under the sheet. Marcus, the neurosurgeon with a thing for Zoe, was back. Zoe's voice was polite, but firm. "I'm slammed. Marcus, patience come first. Babe, you're breaking my heart." Marcus teased, his tone light but persistent. "One dinner, I promise. I'll behave." James's pulse spiked, the monitor giving a faint blip. "Babe." This guy was pushing his luck. Zoe's response was clipped. "I've got work, Marcus." "Let's keep it professional." Marcus chuckled, unfazed. "All right, but I'm not giving up." As he left, Zoe slipped into the room, her face a mix of irritation and amusement. "He's relentless," she muttered, checking James's IV. "You heard that? Didn't you? Thinks he can charm his way into my calendar." James twitched once, then blinked a silent jab. Zoe laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, don't start, Carter. You're not exactly Mr. Subtle yourself." The moment was brief, but it sparked something in Zoe's laugh. Her fire, it was pulling him in despite the chaos. But then she mentioned Claire, and the warmth faded. "Your ex is causing trouble," Zoe said, her tone shifting. "She showed up at the nurse's station asking about your chart, called you James like she owns you. What's her deal?" James hesitated, then twitched once. "Yes, Claire was his ex, but it was over." He wanted to explain, but all he could do was blink, hoping Zoe would understand. She studied him, her eyes searching. "All right," she said finally. "But if she's going to keep stirring the pot, we need to stay one step ahead." That night, Zoe brought James to a small physical therapy room down the hall. A risky move, but necessary. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of machines and a sliver of moonlight through a narrow window. Zoe locked the door, her hands shaking slightly. "We've got to get you moving," she said, helping James sit up. "If you're going to walk into that boardroom, we start now." James's muscles screamed as Zoe guided his arms, her touch firm but gentle. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he pushed through, driven by her voice. "You've got this, Carter," she said, her eyes locked on his. One step at a time. They were close now, her hands steadying his shoulders, her breath warm against his cheek. The air between them crackled, charged with something unspoken. Zoe's eyes flicked to his, and for a moment the world shrank to just them. "You're tougher than you look," she said softly, her voice catching. James's heart pounded, not from the exercise. He wanted to speak, to tell her she was the toughest person he'd ever met. Instead, he reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers. Zoe froze her breath, hitching. Then in a rush of impulse, she leaned forward and kissed his forehead, a fleeting but electric touch. "You better wake up soon, Carter," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Or I'm in big trouble." James blinked once, his version of a smile. Trouble? He was already there. Zoe pulled back. Her cheeks flushed and laughed shakily. "Don't get cocky," she said, helping him lie back. "We've got work to do." But as she adjusted his pillow, James caught a glimpse of her expression. Hope, fear, and something deeper. The kiss wasn't just a gesture, it was a promise, and it scared him as much as it thrilled him. Claire's persistence, Marcus's flirting, they were complications, threats to this fragile connection. He couldn't lose Zoe, not when she was his only shot at freedom. Across town, Kevin Techie Lopez was in over his head. The IT room at Horizon Innovations was a mess of cables and empty chip bags, and Kevin was glued to his screen chasing a lead Nina had given him. "I'm not a hacker," he muttered, typing furiously. "I'm just curious." He'd stumbled on an encrypted file in Derek's cloud drive labeled Power Core. Before he could open it, his phone buzzed. Nina Techie. "You're a genius," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "That coffee spill. It freaked Derek out. He's shredding files. Keep digging." "I'm trying," Kevin said, then yelped as his screen flashed a warning from Shadow. "Oh crap, Nina. I think I just pissed off a hacker." "Stay calm," Nina said. "Back up everything and call me." Kevin grinned, despite the panic. Maybe he was a screw-up, but he was Nina's screw-up. Back in the ICU, Zoe relayed the news to James, her eyes sparkling. "Kevin's a walking disaster. But he's our disaster," she said. "He's got Derek on edge, and that's our opening." James twitched once. A fire igniting Zoe's kiss still burned in his mind, but so did the clock ticking down. Claire was pushing, Marcus was circling, and Power Core was closing in. The board vote was in 2 days, and he needed to be ready. With Zoe by his side, he wasn't just fighting for his company, he was fighting for a future he hadn't dared imagine. The ICU at Lakeview Elite Medical Center was a pressure cooker, its sterile walls closing in like a trap. The Chicago skyline outside James Carter's window glowed with a restless energy, mirroring the storm in his mind. 7 days had passed since Zoe Harris, his night nurse and unlikely partner, had uncovered the conspiracy keeping him in a fake coma. His ex, Lauren Brooks, and half-brother Derek Carter were pawns of Power Core, a corporate giant desperate to kill his Sunrise project, a renewable energy system for low-income communities. With the hacker Shadow revealed as disgraced ex-employee Ryan Kessler. They'd faked his medical records to steal Horizon Innovations, but James was awake fighting from his hospital bed, and Zoe was his secret weapon. The board vote to strip him of power was tomorrow, and the clock was a relentless enemy. Tonight, the air in the ICU crackled with danger. Zoe slipped into the room just after 2 a.m., her lavender scent a fleeting comfort in the antiseptic haze. Her scrubs were slightly wrinkled, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but her jaw was set with defiance. She checked the monitors, her hands quick, then leaned close to James. "We're in the red zone, Carter," she whispered, her voice taut but steady. "1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. You holding up?" James twitched once, his muscles aching from last night's secret physical therapy. Zoe's plan to reduce his sedation was paying off. He could flex his fingers, even shift his legs slightly, but every move was a battle. Derek's push for the board vote had forced their hand, and Dr. Hayes was watching like a hawk. If they slipped now, it was over. James's heart pounded, not just for himself, but for Zoe. She was risking everything, and he couldn't shake the fear that she'd pay the price. Zoe pulled out her tablet, its dim glow illuminating her face. "Bad news," she said, her voice low. "Derek caught me checking Hayes' office last night. Didn't see what I was doing, but he's suspicious. He's got security tailing me, and Hayes is pushing to up your sedation again. I swapped the IV, but we're cutting it close." James's stomach twisted. Derek was closing in, and Zoe was in the crosshairs. He twitched once, then twice, urging her to be careful. Zoe's lips quirked a ghost of a smile. "Don't worry about me, Carter. I've dodged worse, but we've got another problem. Your ex, Claire, Donovan." James's pulse spiked. Claire, the journalist who dated him 5 years ago, had been stirring trouble with her Tribune articles about Lakeview Elite. Her latest piece, hinting at medical malpractice, had rattled Derek. But it was also drawing attention. Zoe's voice tightened. "She showed up at the nurse's station today demanding your chart, called you James, like you're still hers. She's gonna blow our cover if she keeps this up." James twitched once, frustrated. Claire meant well, but her bulldog tactics were a liability. He'd loved her fire once, but it had burned too hot, too controlling. Now she was a wild card, and he couldn't afford wild cards. He blinked, hoping Zoe would read his warning. She nodded, but her eyes flickered with something new, jealousy. "Yeah, I get it," she muttered. "Exes are complicated, but we've got enough on our plate without her playing detective." Before James could respond, another voice cut through the silence, smooth, confident, and way too close. "Zoe, you're killing me out here." "Marcus?" Reed said, his footsteps stopping outside the glass door. Marcus, the neurosurgeon. With a thing for Zoe was back, and his timing couldn't be worse. Zoe stiffened her hand, pausing on the IV. "I'm working, Marcus," she called, her voice cool but strained. "Busy night?" "Come on, babe," Marcus teased, his tone light but insistent. "You've been dodging me all week." "One coffee." "Zoe, I'm not that bad." James's fingers clenched under the sheet, the monitor giving a faint blip. "Babe." This guy was begging for a reality check. Zoe's eyes flicked to James, catching his reaction. "Professional, Marcus," she said, her voice sharper now. "Let's keep it that way." Marcus chuckled, unfazed. "All right, but I'm not giving up. You know, I'm the better option." As his footsteps faded, Zoe exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "He's a pain in my neck," she muttered, checking James's chart. "Thinks he can charm his way into my life." "You heard that, didn't you?" James twitched once, then blinked a silent jab. Zoe laughed softly, shaking her head. "Oh, don't you start, Carter. You're not exactly Mr. Innocent, with your reporter ex sniffing around." The moment was fleeting, but it sparked a warmth in James's chest. Zoe's laugh was a lifeline pulling him through the fear. But the mention of Claire and Marcus's persistence stirred a new worry. Zoe was his partner, his hope. But the lines between ally and something more were blurring, and with Marcus and Claire circling those lines, were dangerous. The next morning, the ICU was a hive of activity. James caught Derek's voice outside barking orders to Dr. Hayes. "I want those reports locked down," Derek snapped. "No leaks, no surprises. The board's voting tomorrow, and Carter's not waking up." Hayes's reply was nervous, almost pleading. "I'm doing my best, Mr. Carter. But that nurse Harris, she's been asking questions." She checked the sedation logs. James's blood ran cold. Zoe was exposed. Derek's voice dropped cold and final. "Handle it. Hayes, fire her if you have to. We're too close to screw this up." James's heart pounded, his fingers twitching with helpless rage. Zoe was in danger, and he was stuck a prisoner in his own body. He needed to move to protect her, but his legs were still weak. His voice, a distant dream. All he could do was wait, and waiting was torture. That afternoon, a new voice joined the chaos. Claire, her New York accent cutting through like a knife. "I'm not leaving, Nina," she said, arguing outside the door. "That article shook things up, and I'm not stopping till I see James." "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Nina Jackson," replied, her voice calm but firm. "Give me time to get the medical reports. We'll do this legally." "Legally," Claire scoffed. "Someone's burying him." "Nina, I'm not sitting on my hands." James's stomach churned. Claire was right, but her recklessness was a grenade. If she pushed harder, Derek might panic, and panic made people deadly. He needed to warn her, but he was trapped. His only link to the world. Zoe's whispered updates. That night, Zoe brought James back to the physical therapy room, a small space tucked away in the clinic's basement. The room was dim, lit by the soft glow of machines and a sliver of moonlight through a high window. Zoe locked the door, her hands steady despite the strain in her eyes. "We're pushing it, Carter," she said, helping him sit up. But you've got to be ready for that boardroom. Tomorrow's our shot. James's muscles burned as Zoe guided his legs, her hands firm on his knees. Sweat dripped down his temples, but he gritted his teeth, driven by her voice. "You're doing it, Carter," she said. Her eyes locked on his. "One more step. Come on." They were close now, her hands steadying his hips, her breath warm against his cheek. The air crackled, charged with the weight of their shared fight. Zoe's eyes flicked to his, and for a moment, the world shrank to just them. "You're a fighter," she said softly, her voice catching. "Tougher than anyone I've met." James's heart pounded not just from the effort. He wanted to tell her she was the real fighter, the one risking everything for a stranger. Instead, he reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers. Zoe froze her breath, hitching. Then in a rush of impulse, she leaned forward and kissed his forehead, a fleeting but electric touch. "Don't make me regret this." "Carter," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You better walk out of here." James blinked once, his chest tight. Regret. He'd never let that happen. Zoe pulled back, her cheeks flushed, and laughed shakily. "Don't get cocky," she said, helping him lie back. "We've got a war to win." But as she adjusted his pillow, James caught the worry in her eyes. The kiss wasn't just a moment. It was a crack in her armor, and it scared her as much as it did him. Claire's articles, Marcus's flirting, they were threats to this fragile bond, and tomorrow's vote was a ticking bomb. The next morning, the ICU was a pressure cooker. James caught Lauren's voice outside sharp and panicked. "Nina's pushing back," she said to Derek. "She's got a lawyer sniffing around the ethics committee. We need her out now." "Done," Derek replied, his voice cold. "The documents are in place." "She's finished." James's blood boiled. Nina was his shield, the one who'd fought for him when the corporate world tried to shut him out. Framing her was a new low even for Derek. He needed to act, but his body was still a cage, his strength returning too slowly. Then Marcus's voice cut through, smooth and infuriating. "Zoe, you're avoiding me," he said, his footsteps stopping near the door. "I'm serious about us. One dinner, and I'll prove it. I'm not avoiding you," Zoe replied, her voice tight. "I'm working, Marcus." "Drop it, babe." "You're breaking my heart," Marcus teased. But there was an edge to his tone. "What's so special about this patient?" James's pulse spiked, the monitor blipping. Zoe's voice was ice. "He's my job. Marcus, back off." As Marcus left, Zoe slipped into the room, her face a storm. "He's getting nosy," she muttered, checking James's IV. "Asked about your sedation logs. If he figures out what I'm doing..." James twitched once, then twice, urging her to stay sharp. Zoe nodded, but her eyes were haunted. "I'm fine, Carter," she said, her voice softer. "But this is getting real. Derek's watching. Marcus is prying, and Claire's making it worse. We need you up now." Across town. Kevin Techie. Lopez was in full panic mode. The IT room at Horizon Innovations was a war zone of cables and coffee cups, and Kevin was glued to his screen, chasing Shadow's trail. "I'm not cut out for this," he muttered, typing furiously. He'd found another encrypted file in Derek's drive, but opening it triggered a virus warning. "Oh, no, no, no." His phone buzzed. Nina Techie. "You're a lifesaver," she said, her voice electric. "That virus. It's Shadow's signature. We've got a lead." "I almost crashed the server," Kevin yelped. "Derek's gonna kill me." "Stay cool," Nina said. "Back up everything and lay low." Kevin grinned, popping a Red Bull. Maybe he was a hero, even if he felt like a klutz. Back in the ICU, Zoe relayed the news to James, her eyes bright. "Kevin's a mess, but he's our mess," she said. "He's got Shadow on the ropes, and that's our edge." James twitched once, a fire igniting. Tomorrow was the board vote and they were teetering on the edge. Zoe's kiss lingered in his mind, a promise of something more. But so did the danger. Derek was closing in. Claire was reckless, and Marcus was a wild card. As Zoe adjusted his IV, her hand brushed his, a silent vow. "We're doing this, Carter," she whispered. "No." Backing down. One twitch. No backing down. The ICU at Lakeview Elite Medical Center was a ticking bomb, its sterile silence masking a war. Outside James Carter's window, Chicago's skyline pulsed with life, a stark contrast to the prison of his hospital bed. 8 days had passed since Zoe Harris, his night nurse and fierce ally, had uncovered the conspiracy keeping him in a fake coma. His ex, Lauren Brooks, and half-brother Derek Carter, backed by the energy giant Power Core, were plotting to steal Horizon Innovations by faking his medical records with the help of a hacker. Shadow revealed as Ryan Kessler, a disgraced former employee. Tomorrow was the board vote to strip James of power, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Zoe's secret physical therapy had given him strength, but every move was a gamble, and the walls were closing in. Tonight, the air in the ICU was electric heavy with the promise of a breakthrough or disaster. Zoe slipped into the room just after 1 a.m., her lavender scent a quiet anchor in the antiseptic storm. Her scrubs were creased, her eyes rimmed with fatigue, but her voice was steel. "We're at the finish line, Carter," she whispered, leaning close. "1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. You ready to flip the board?" James twitched once, his heart racing. Zoe's plan to get him walking for the board meeting was their last shot. But Derek's suspicion and Dr. Leonard Hayes's paranoia had turned the clinic into a fortress. Zoe was walking a tightrope, and James couldn't shake the fear that she'd fall. Her hand brushed his as she checked the IV, a fleeting touch that sparked something dangerous. Hope, maybe more. But with Claire Donovan's reckless articles and Marcus Reed's persistent flirting, their fragile alliance was under siege. Zoe pulled out her tablet, its glow casting shadows across her face. "Big news," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Kevin, our IT guy, hit the jackpot. He hacked into Derek's cloud drive and found an email from Shadow. It's a gold mine. Carter Power Core's not just funding this. They've got a whole network, including a senator on their payroll. They're planning to tank Sunrise and corner the energy market." James's mind reeled. Senator Power Core's reach was deeper than he'd imagined, a hydra with heads in politics and business. Sunrise, his project to bring cheap energy to communities like Chicago's South Side, was a threat they'd kill to stop. He twitched once, urging Zoe to keep digging. She nodded, her eyes fierce. Kevin's backing up the files, but Shadow's onto him. "We've got to move fast." Before James could respond, a new sound broke the silence, soft but deliberate footsteps. Zoe snapped her tablet shut and stood, her voice shifting to professional calm. "Just checking vitals, Dr. Khan," she said as the door slid open. Dr. Amina Khan stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "Good," she said, her voice low. "Lock the door. Zoe." "We've got a problem." James's pulse spiked, but he kept still. Khan had proven herself with the EEG scan confirming his fake coma, but her grim tone set him on edge. Zoe locked the door with a click, her hand lingering on the handle. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice steady but wary. Khan pulled a USB drive from her pocket, her expression hard. "I cross-checked the EEG data with Hayes's reports. He's not just faking your coma, Carter. He's been forging signatures, including mine. I found this in his office, a draft of the board's medical report claiming permanent brain damage. It's ready to go tomorrow. James's blood ran cold. Permanent brain damage. That was the final nail. The lie to justify stealing his company. He twitched once, signaling urgency. Zoe's jaw tightened. "We need that draft," she said. "It's our smoking gun." Khan nodded, slipping the USB into Zoe's hand. "It's encrypted, but Kevin can crack it. But be careful. Hayes knows someone's been in his office. He's doubling security tonight." As Khan left, Zoe sat beside James, her hand gripping the USB like a lifeline. "This is it, Carter," she whispered, her voice trembling with resolve. "We've got Power Core's emails, Hayes's fake report, and Kessler's trail. But if we don't get you to that boardroom tomorrow, it's all for nothing." James twitched, once his chest tight. Zoe was risking her life for him, and the weight of it was crushing. He wanted to tell her to run to save herself, but her eyes held him fierce, unyielding. And something more. Something that scared him as much as it pulled him in. The next morning, the ICU was a pressure cooker. James caught Derek's voice outside sharp and panicked. "Hayes, you idiot," he hissed. "That nurse Harris. She was in your office. I want her gone now. I'm trying." Hayes stammered, his voice shaky, but firing her without cause could draw attention. "The board's already asking questions. Then make it happen," Derek snapped. "We're too close to lose." James's heart pounded his fingers, twitching with helpless rage. Zoe was exposed, and he was stuck. His body still too weak to fight. But Zoe's therapy was working last night. He'd taken 3 shaky steps, her hands steadying him. He needed one more night. One more push to walk into that boardroom and end this. Then Claire Donovan's voice cut through, sharp and relentless. "I'm done waiting, Nina," she said, arguing outside the door. That Tribune piece shook the cage. "But I need more. Let me see James, or I'm going public with everything. You're gonna get yourself sued." "Claire, Nina," Jackson replied, her voice calm but strained. "Give me 24 hours. I've got a lead on the medical reports." "Sued," Claire scoffed. "Someone's burying him." "Nina, I'm not stopping." James's stomach churned. Claire was a bull in a china shop, and her recklessness was lighting fuses. If she went public now, Derek might do something desperate like hurt Zoe. He needed to warn her, but he was trapped. His only lifeline, Zoe's whispered updates. That afternoon, Marcus Reed's voice added to the chaos, smooth and infuriating Zoe. "You're ghosting me," he said, his footsteps stopping near the door. "I'm serious about us. One dinner, and I'll show you. I'm the real deal. I'm not ghosting you," Zoe replied, her voice tight. "I'm working, Marcus. Let it go, babe. What's so special about this patient?" Marcus pressed his tone sharper now. "You're spending way too much time with Carter." James's pulse spiked, the monitor blipping. Zoe's voice was ice. "He's my job, Marcus. Back off." As Marcus left, Zoe slipped into the room, her face a storm. "He's getting too close," she muttered, checking James's IV. "Asked about your sedation logs. If he figures out what I'm doing." James twitched once, then twice, urging her to stay sharp. Zoe nodded, but her eyes were haunted. "I'm fine, Carter," she said, her voice softer. "But this is getting real. Derek's watching. Marcus is prying, and Claire's making it worse. We need you up now." That night, Zoe brought James to the physical therapy room, a small space bathed in the soft glow of machines. She locked the door, her hands trembling slightly. "This is our last shot, Carter," she said, helping him stand. "You've got to walk tomorrow, or we're done." James's legs burned as Zoe guided him, her hands firm on his hips. Sweat dripped down his face, but he pushed through, driven by her voice. "You're almost there," she said, her eyes locked on his. "One more step. Come on." They were close now, her body inches from his, her breath warm against his cheek. The air crackled, charged with the weight of their fight, and something deeper. Zoe's eyes flicked to his, and the room seemed to shrink. "You're a damn miracle," she said softly, her voice catching. James's heart pounded not just from the effort. He wanted to tell her she was the miracle, the one risking everything for him. Instead, he reached for her, his hand finding hers. Zoe froze, her breath hitching. Then, in a rush of emotion, she pulled him into a corner, away from the machine's glow. Her lips met his, a fierce, desperate kiss that burned through the fear. James's hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer, the world fading to just them. "I'm not losing you, Carter," she whispered against his mouth, her voice raw. "Not to Derek, not to Marcus, not to anyone." James's voice, hoarse from disuse, broke through. "You won't." He rasped his first words in weeks. "I'm right here." Zoe's eyes widened, tears glistening. She kissed him again, softer, but no less intense, her hands framing his face, but a sharp beep from the hallway broke the spell. Security was close. Zoe pulled back, her cheeks flushed. "We're in deep now," she said, half laughing, half panicked. "Get ready to walk, because I'm not carrying you into that boardroom." James blinked, his lips curving in a weak smile. Deep. They'd been in deep since day one. Across town, Kevin Techie Lopez was a nervous wreck. The IT room at Horizon Innovations was a chaos of cables and empty Red Bull cans, and Kevin was glued to his screen decrypting the USB from Dr. Khan. "I'm not a spy," he muttered, typing furiously. The file opened a draft of Hayes's fake report, claiming James had irreversible brain damage. "Holy crap," Kevin whispered, his eyes wide. His phone buzzed. "Nina, Techie, you're a legend," she said, her voice electric. "That report's our ace. Send it to me encrypted." "I'm trying," Kevin said, then yelped as his screen flashed another warning from Shadow Nina. Shadow's hacking back. "They know we're onto them." "Stay calm," Nina said. "Back up everything and get out." Kevin grinned, his hands shaking. Hero or not, he was in over his head. Back in the ICU, Zoe relayed the news to James, her eyes bright. "Kevin's a disaster, but he's our disaster," she said. "That report's our ticket. Carter, we're ready." James twitched once, a fire igniting. The kiss still burned in his mind. Zoe's words, a vow, but so did the danger. Derek was closing in. Claire was reckless, and Marcus was a wild card. Tomorrow was their shot, and they couldn't miss. As Zoe adjusted his IV, her hand lingered on his. "We're doing this, Carter," she whispered. "You and me." One twitch. "You and me." The morning sun poured through the skyscraper windows of Horizon Innovations boardroom in downtown Chicago, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. The room buzzed with tension, a courtroom awaiting a verdict. 12 board members sat in leather chairs, their faces a mix of unease and anticipation. At the head of the table, Derek Carter stood tall, his tailored suit and smug smile masking the predator within. Beside him, Lauren Brooks dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her performance as the grieving ex flawless, except for the absence of her usual diamond bracelet, a detail that didn't escape the sharp-eyed Samantha Okoye, the only black board member, and James Carter's longtime ally. James was nowhere to be seen, his absence a ghost haunting the room. For 9 days, he'd been trapped in a fake coma at Lakeview Elite Medical Center, a victim of Derek and Lauren's plot with PowerCore to steal his company and kill his Sunrise project, a renewable energy system for low-income communities. But James was awake, fighting from his hospital bed with Zoe Harris, his night nurse and fierce partner, by his side. They'd uncovered PowerCore's network, exposed the hacker shadow as ex-employee Ryan Kessler, and secured a fake medical report from Dr. Leonard Hayes, claiming permanent brain damage. Today was the board vote to strip James of power, and everything hinged on this moment. In the ICU. Just an hour earlier, Zoe had helped James into a navy blue suit, her hands steady despite the tremor in her voice. "You've got this, Carter," she'd whispered, adjusting his tie. "Walk in there and take it all back." James's legs were shaky, his body still weak from weeks of sedation, but Zoe's therapy had worked miracles. He'd gripped her hand, his first words in days, rough but clear. "We're doing this together, Zoe." Her eyes had glistened, and for a moment they'd stood there, two warriors bound by a fight, and something deeper. Now, as Derek handed out the falsified medical report, the boardroom was a powder keg. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "as you can see, my brother has suffered irreversible brain damage. Dr. Hayes recommends we act swiftly to stabilize Horizon's leadership." Samantha Okoye leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the report. "This feels convenient, Derek," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "James was in perfect health before that crash. Tragedies happen." Lauren interjected, her tone sugary sweet. "Believe me, no one's more heartbroken than I am." Samantha's gaze flicked to Lauren's bare wrist, her lips twitching. "Heartbroken." "Sure." The board murmured, uncertainty rippling through the room. Derek's smile tightened. "We all admire James's legacy," he said, "but the stock's down, 15% since the accident. Investors need stability. Let's vote and move forward." Samantha raised a hand, her voice cutting through. "One question. Why isn't Dr. Hayes here to explain this report in person?" Derek's eyes flicked to Lauren, a flash of panic. "He's tied up with an emergency," he said, recovering quickly, "but the report is clear." "Clear as your conscience, Derek." A deep, steady voice echoed from the doorway. The room froze. All eyes turned as James Carter stepped into the boardroom, leaning on a dark wooden cane. His navy suit crisp despite the strain in his posture. Behind him, Zoe Harris stood tall, her scrubs traded for a sleek blazer, her eyes blazing with defiance. Nina Jackson, James's lawyer, followed with a black briefcase, her face a mask of triumph. Dr. Amina Khan brought up the rear, a stack of documents in hand. Lauren's glass of water hit the table, splashing across the mahogany. Derek's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "That's impossible," he stammered, rising to his feet. "You're in a coma," Hayes confirmed it. "Hayes is currently with the police." James said, his voice rough but commanding as he stepped forward, facing charges of falsifying medical records and attempted murder through negligence. He leaned on the cane, his gaze locking onto Derek's. "You thought you could bury me, brother? You forgot who built this company." The board gasped, whispers erupting. Zoe stepped forward, placing a set of neurological scans on the table. As an independent forensic neurologist, she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "I can confirm Mr. Carter was kept in an artificially induced coma with no medical necessity. His recovery was deliberately sabotaged." "Outrageous." Lauren protested, her composure shattering. "James had a terrible accident. We were protecting him." "A convenient accident," James said coldly, his eyes boring into her. "A jet with perfect maintenance records suffers a hydraulic failure right when you're pushing to restructure Horizon's shares. Convenient, isn't it?" Nina opened her briefcase, distributing documents to the board. "These are communications between Lauren Brooks and Derek Carter in the weeks before the crash. she said, her voice like steel. Note the references to a permanent solution to the Sunrise obstacle. Sunrise James's dream to bring affordable energy to communities like the South Side, where he'd grown up, dodging bullets and doubters. The board members flipped through the documents, their faces hardening. Derek's hands shook as he gripped the table. "This is absurd," he said, his voice rising. "We were discussing technical issues with Sunrise, not James." James's lips curved a predator's smile. "Zoe, if you please." Zoe stepped forward with a tablet cueing a video. The screen flickered to life, showing Derek in a Lakeview elite hallway speaking to Hayes. "Keep him sedated until the vote," Derek said, checking his watch. "Then we can let nature take its course. Coma patients don't last forever." The boardroom exploded in gasps. "This is a setup," Derek shouted, his face red. "A fake video. You can't trust this nurse." "Forensic neurologist?" Zoe corrected, her voice calm but cutting. "Certified in digital evidence analysis. And we have more." She nodded to Nina, who placed another document on the table, bank records showing payments from a Power Core shell company to Hayes, starting 3 days before the crash. Samantha Okoye stood, her voice thunderous. "This is disgusting. Attempted murder, corporate fraud, family betrayal. You're done." "Derek." James stepped closer to Derek, who backed away, his bravado crumbling. "You know what gets me?" James said, his voice low and lethal. "You really thought you could take me down? Me, who built Horizon from a garage, who faced every boardroom sneer and still won. You underestimated me, Derek. And you underestimated Zoe. Lauren, seeing the tide turn, tried one last play. James, honey," she said, her voice trembling. "You're confused. The meds are messing with your head. We were just trying to save you." James's eyes were ice. "Save me? Like you saved my penthouse already, redecorating it. Where's your bracelet?" "Lauren pawned it already." The boardroom fell silent, Lauren's face crumpling. Security guards entered quietly, the head nodding to James. "Mr. Carter, the police are in the lobby. Shall we escort Mr. Carter and Ms. Brooks?" "Please," James said, his voice final. As the guards approached, Derek panicked, his voice shrill. "You don't get it. Sunrise will tank our contracts. Investors will bolt. You're throwing away everything for a charity case." "It's not charity," James said, his voice steady, as the guards led Derek away. "It's the future and the investors. They approved Sunrise last night while you were plotting my funeral." Lauren's sobs echoed as she was escorted out the boardroom, emptying until only the stunned board, Samantha, Nina, Zoe, and Khan remained. James sank into a chair, exhaustion carving lines into his face. Samantha squeezed his shoulder, her voice soft. "I thought we'd lost you, James. I would have been lost." James said, his eyes finding Zoe's, without someone who refused to let injustice win. Zoe's lips curved, but her eyes held a storm relief pride and something unspoken. The boardroom victory was theirs, but James felt a new weight. The fight wasn't over. Power Core's network ran deeper, and Shadow was still out there. An hour later, James and Zoe stood on the rooftop of Horizon Innovations, the Chicago wind whipping around them. The city stretched below its lights, mingling with the first glow of sunrise panels in a distant neighborhood. Zoe leaned against the railing, her blazer traded for a hoodie, her hair loose in the breeze. "We did it, Carter," she said, her voice soft but triumphant. "You walked in there and took it all back." James stood beside her, his cane resting against the railing. "We did it," he corrected, his voice rough but warm. "I was just the guy with the cane. You were the one who kept me alive." Zoe's smile faded, her eyes searching his. "Claire came by before the meeting," she said, her voice quieter now. Told me you two were good together once. Said I'd never understand you. Like she did. James's jaw tightened. Claire had pulled him aside, too, her voice soft but insistent. "You've got a good one, James," she'd said. "Don't mess it up." He'd nodded, letting her go, closing that chapter for good. Now he turned to Zoe, his hand finding hers. "Claire's the past," he said, his voice steady. "She never got me. Not really." "You do?" Zoe's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. "And Marcus?" she asked, a teasing edge in her voice. "He left me a note, you know. Said you're the better man. But he's still got better hair." James chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. Marcus had cornered Zoe after the meeting, his usual charm tempered by defeat. "I was a fool," he'd said. "Carter's lucky. Don't let him forget it." Zoe had laughed, tossing the note aside. Now James squeezed her hand, his voice low. "Marcus is a footnote. You're my future. Zoe, if you'll have me." Zoe's eyes glistened, but her smile was fierce. "Good," she said, stepping closer, "because I'm not sharing you with any reporters or doctors." She rose on her toes, her lips meeting his in a soft, lingering kiss, the city fading around them. The wind carried the promise of sunrise of a fight not yet finished, but for now, they were enough. Back at Horizon. Kevin Techie. Lopez was basking in his moment. The IT room was still a mess, but Kevin was a hero, at least to Nina. "You saved our butts, Techie," she'd said, clapping his shoulder. "That USB cracked the case. I almost crashed the server," Kevin protested, but he was grinning, a Red Bull in hand. At the Sunrise press conference later, he fumbled the projector, the screen flashing a meme of a cat in a suit. "I'm not fired, right?" he yelped as the room laughed. James, watching from the sidelines, shook his head. "You're safe, Techie. For now." 6 months later, Horizon's headquarters gleamed with Sunrise panels, a symbol of its new mission. James stood in his office watching a news report. Derek, convicted of attempted murder and fraud, got 15 years. Lauren 8 after a plea deal. Hayes lost his license awaiting trial. But a new email from Shadow, warning of PowerCore's deeper network, lingered in James's mind. The fight wasn't over. Zoe entered, a tablet in hand. "Check this," she said, showing a video of kids in a Southside school, their classrooms lit by Sunrise energy bills, down 80%. "We're changing lives. Carter." James smiled, pulling her close. "We're just getting started," he said, his voice steady. "PowerCore's still out there, but with you, I'm ready for anything." They'd built something bigger than Horizon, bigger than Sunrise, a partnership forged in betrayal, sealed in trust. As they stood together, Chicago's skyline, a canvas of possibility. James knew one truth. Their greatest strength wasn't power, but the integrity they'd fought for. If James and Zoe's epic journey of betrayal, love, and justice has you inspired, smash that subscribe button and comment below. What's the biggest fight you've won against the odds? Share your story. We're all ears.